everyone, Michelle Seidling here with another episode of Food Experience Unplugged. Today we'll explore nutritional solutions for hormone changes. Here to help us do that is award-winning nutritionist, gut specialist, and author Trish Tucker May. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to be informed as new episodes become available. Also, be sure to rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform if you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes. Be sure to check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some resources as you begin your health journey, including signing up for your free 45-minute breakthrough session, where we'll discuss your challenges and create a roadmap for you to develop healthy habits regardless of your lifestyle or commitments, to help you meet your health goals and be at your best. Trish Tucker May, welcome to Food Experience Unplugged.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for being here. We are happy to have you here as an award-winning nutritionist, a gut specialist, and more importantly, just the link that you focus on with people at peri-menopause, menopause, just kind of that change that takes place and how to navigate that from a nutritional perspective and from a health perspective.
Thank you so much. Yes. Winning the nutritionist, UK Nutritionist of the Year, and being an Aussie and living in England, that was quite an accolade. I was quite surprised, but very flattered to be voted from peer and client reviews to win that award, and super excited. Also won the Janie Love's Industry Award, the Health and Wellness Industry Award, got a gold medal in that last year with the gut healing program that supports perimenopausal women. So yeah, super excited to be here.
Oh, yes. Well, to get started, will you take a moment to introduce yourself and what brought you to this point? Why the focus on those hormone changes?
Okay, well, I'm a menopausal mum. I've got 2 young boys, and I've always been really fascinated in natural solutions. I qualified as a nutritionist a few years ago now, and I've been studying for many years. But I tell you what really brought me to this point and to this, a life-changing experience with my own health. For 32 years, I had very debilitating respiratory challenges. I had asthma and often bronchitis and shingles as an adult, and all these things were going wrong. And look, at the age of 32, when I peaked at 12 anaphylactic episodes in 1 year, I knew I had to get some help. I knew that something had to change. Like, I was always unwell. I was born in with respiratory challenges. I've got a twin brother, and he went home from the hospital when we were born, and I stayed behind because I was underweight and my lungs were underdeveloped. And then the respiratory challenges plagued me for my life. As a kid, I was always the first person in the house to get sick, and when I got sick, I would have bronchitis and that sort of thing. And I had a whole range of medications, steroid inhalers, puffers, antihistamines. I was always quite irritated and itchy and sneezy and wheezy. And at the age of 32, when I had so many anaphylactic episodes, I thought, I have to get help. I have to do something. I found my way intuitively to this amazing nutritionist here in the UK, and I tell you what she diagnosed me with, which it was such a surprise to me. I would never have drawn the link between respiratory challenges and asthma and gut health. Mm-hmm. So I was diagnosed with a hookworm, with high candida, with various parasites and spores and flukes, and Lyme's disease. Wow. So I was a pretty picture of toxicity and inflammation and overwhelm, and I went into her with a box full of medication that I was, I was heavily reliant on an EpiPen. I had Beclofort, Ventolin, Atrovan, antihistamines, and taking regular painkillers and that sort of thing. Now, working with a nutritionist over a period of 6 weeks and doing a gold standard elimination protocol, like taking out all the inflammatory foods and working with a whole range of tinctures like wormwood tincture and walnut tincture and high doses of vitamin C and B vitamins and zinc. Basically, my immune system was transformed and my gut health was transformed. And to the point where after working with her for 6 weeks, I've now been medication free for 18 years. So it was such a life-changing experience. I thought, I have to go and study this. Now, I always had an interest in nutrition because I was so passionate about juicing from a very young age. I was given a juicer for my 14th birthday. So my mum gave me a juicer and this book called The Uses of Juices. And, I had kinesiology as a young teenager. I eliminated dairy from my diet as a young teenager, intuitively thinking it would be better for my asthma. And so I found myself at the age of 32 really considering a complete career change. And at that point, I went and started studying nutrition. And I wanted to be a dietitian at school. I got doing work experience at a local hospital. I thought, I really want to be a dietitian. And I got put in the basement of the hospital filing patient records for a week. And I thought, oh, this is boring. So it's almost like I came full circle, but almost accidentally became full circle and back to where I really wanted to be, which was nutrition. Now, fast forward 18 years, and having had my children late in life, so I had my first son at 38, my second son at 42, I think soon after that I entered the peri-menopause. And it was a rocky road. I was in a high-stress job. I was running my own mobile juice business in Australia and the UK. I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to sleep. The sleep deprivation with my second son was quite brutal. He didn't sleep very well for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So I was losing sleep. My hair went grey pretty much overnight. And I was quite stressed. I was, living in 2 countries, having 2 young boys at that age was, I think, quite stressful. I think still having 2 rambunctious young boys at this age is quite stressful, but there we go. Comes with a lot of joy as well. And so I felt that my entry into perimenopause was one of stress, and I had to do a lot of work in balancing out the stress in order to work on the gut that had this, this predisposition to a weakness there, because I had all this allergies. I had all this. I'm still quite sensitive to inflammatory foods like wheat or dairy. I can't have a lot of that in my diet. And so, still doing a lot of work on the gut and realizing that the stress and the work on the gut and the work on the liver had to be done in order to navigate a smooth journey into the menopause. And so I started to study a lot more about the link between the gut health and the menopause symptoms. And it's interesting, in some countries there are no menopause symptoms. In Asia, they don't really talk about menopause being a thing. But in this country, in the UK and Australia, and I imagine in the States, we have 39 very common, very debilitating symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. So the more we do the work on the gut and the work on reducing the stress levels, I'm absolutely positive the less we will struggle in our perimenopause and our menopause, and the more we will be able to sail through calmly, pain-free, and have it as a really enjoyable time of our life. That is my aim, that, I really help women over the age of 40 deal with their digestive distress in order to calm the hormones and balance the hormones and make that journey through the perimenopause and through the menopause to be as wonderful as possible, rather than, hormonal hell where we're, because I'm seeing clients that are not sleeping, they're putting on the weight, they're feeling irritable, they're feeling low self-esteem, they're feeling, quite crazy at times, they're feeling very on edge, they've got high levels of stress and anxiety and depression, and all of this can be wrapped up in, that hormonal journey. So, it's been an interesting journey, but I think my own health journey has shown me that when you create an environment where the body will heal itself, then the body will no longer start to shout or whisper or whatever those symptoms are doing. You can really manage those symptoms holistically and think, okay, how can I make my hormonal journey better by looking at the gut and looking at stress and looking at all those lifestyle factors that affect the gut and the stress levels.
I love that. I love your own journey, as well as, just wanting to really focus on that. Now, with your own journey, you had mentioned, you got to a point where, okay, enough is enough, and no one likes to go around with a box full of medications and so forth. Now, you mentioned it wasn't very long that when you had started working with a nutritionist and making some changes that you felt that transition, that you felt that improvement. How was that journey? Was there, just specific recommendations that you put in place? What was that journey like? A little bit more.
Yeah, it was really like I look back on that time and I think it was a miracle, really, to go from so many medications and so many symptoms of irritability, like that itchiness and sneeziness and wheeziness and real irritability, like at a head level. I was really suffering headaches, but I felt crazy in myself that I really wanted to almost self-harm. Like I recall wanting to jump out of a moving vehicle. I was so irritated. And I was irritated on the inside, like under the skin, like ants crawling. It was such a profound experience to go from that level of irritation to 6 weeks later being almost reborn, like a complete different person. And it's interesting that, when you take out the inflammatory foods and you deal with what's going on in the gut, especially if there's parasites or pathogens in the gut or infections or candida, when you have an overgrowth of yeast in the gut and you starve the parasites, you starve the candida, how quickly the body will respond to that. And honestly, and I wasn't overweight at the time, but my body shape changed. Like I went from having this quite, like a bloated gut, not a massive amount of extra weight around the middle, but my body shape definitely changed in that time as well. And what it comprised of particularly was elimination. So there was a lot of foods that I could not eat. At the time, I was running my mobile juice business, and this nutritionist said to me, "Absolutely no fruit." I was like, "What?
Oh.
I'm going to a nutritionist, and you're telling me no fruit?" And of course, no nightshades. And that was, potatoes and tomatoes, particularly. It's like, wow, what? Like, what are potatoes and tomatoes healthy? And potato, particularly, she said, very prone to mold, very problematic for inflammation. And I would never have thought, oh my goodness, like the list of foods that I could not eat were all healthy foods. No stone fruits. Okay, so imagine no cherries, no nectarines, no peaches, no mangoes, no avocados, no coconut. I thought, oh my goodness, all these foods are really healthy. What's going on? And she said, no, it's just for a period of time, for 6 weeks. And then we can slowly reintroduce those foods. And during that time also, and interestingly, we did this work in conjunction with the full moon, which helps interrupt the breeding cycle of the parasites. And also, different techniques like wormwood and clove and walnut tincture helps to break open the biofilm that encases pathogens. And so there was a lot of work to be done on, like grapefruit seed extract and high doses of vitamin C and cysteine, which is an amino acid, building up the body, nourishing the body in a different way, but also exposing these pathogens to the immune system so that the immune system can take over and help, get these out of the body. So it was a fascinating journey. It was a very much one of, I had to trust in the process, but I also had to be ready and open in my thinking that this was going to work, and I was ready to do the work and the body was going to respond. So definitely I was ready to do that work. I mean, I was, I think that my allergies had become so life-threatening at that point that I really needed to, to do the work. So I just said exactly, she said, okay, don't eat all of these foods. And there was, oh my goodness, I'd probably have to look back on that sheet. There was probably so many more foods on there that I couldn't eat for that period of time. So to eliminate all fruit, all sugar, all grains, all nuts, all some meats, like even lamb, even red meat was off. I had a very small range of vegetables that I could eat. All grains definitely off. And, so it seemed quite restrictive in that period of time, but I thought, okay, I just have to do this. And then the doses of, some of the tinctures, I remembered having a very high dose of cysteine and salt together, the same amount of cysteine as salt, and it was quite a lot. And I had to drink that in grapefruit juice, and it was just so disgusting. and it made me feel really quite ill for about an hour. She said, you make sure you sit down when you have this. And it did really, and you could feel like things were being killed off. And even with the no sugar, so I think my diet was quite high in fruit. I was juicing, so I was doing a lot of fruit juicing. So not even, not having fruit for that period of time is fascinating. You could feel things dying off. You could feel cravings that you didn't feel like were, that were almost not really me craving them. There was something else living in my body that was craving these things, and they had to go. They had to die. So it was a really fascinating process, and one that I'm very grateful to have been through, because I'm very empathetic with my clients, that I know it's hard initially, but usually it's only the first 3 days of a cleanse or any sort of program where you're changing those habits. It's usually only the first 3 days that are hard, and then you build in different new habits to replace those old habits, and then it's okay. You're on a different, you're on this different trajectory, and you can make that change. It's usually the first few days that are uncomfortable.
Okay. So that kind of beckons the question, as you were eliminating so many foods, what did you eat over those 6 weeks?
Yeah, I remembered I could have chicken, I could have green beans, I could have the red peppers were out. Like green beans, it was very, very limited. Even a lot of leafy greens. I think I was still able to have baby spinach, cucumber, courgette. Peas were off. It was really, very limited. I know that I could have this. There was this breakfast cereal that was based on quinoa and buckwheat that I could have. That was okay. And very little, so it was just the same sort of meals over and over again. But that was okay. When you take that entertainment value out of food, like we put so much importance on this variety of food, or this entertainment of food. So once you remove that entertainment value, it's quite easy to say, okay, I'm just going to eat this same thing and just have it ready, and and it was okay. So bananas, I could only have once every 5 days, one banana. Eggs were okay. Yes, it was quite restrictive, but it really worked.
Yes. Now, as far as during those 6 weeks, were you also gradually decreasing your medications?
Yes, the process with the medications, like I did feel the benefit with not needing the medications almost immediately within a couple of weeks, and I think even I was holding on to the Ventolin as a psychosomatic reaction to having used it for so long, because I would be terrified if I went out without my medication. If I went anywhere without Ventolin, I'd be like instantly feeling wheezy. But all those symptoms disappeared very, very quickly, which was quite remarkable. It was very interesting process. I think once you're killing off the candida, and I know for some people killing off candida can take quite a long time, depending on how big that infestation is, how much that yeast has grown throughout the intestines and up into the mouth or down into the vagina, or it's in the cells, it's wrapping all around the digestive tract. Depending on how deep that is, it can be very difficult to kill off. But I think the combination of the natural tinctures and the high cysteine and the cysteine and salt and, oh my goodness, all those different strategies worked very effectively.
Okay. Now, going through that whole process, what was your mental state? What was what were your emotions going through this? Was it?
Yes,
did you feel
I do
fear
recall.
or excitement or?
Yeah, absolute incredible excitement. I felt that I was making some real massive changes in my life. I felt very, I did feel very excited. I did feel a little bit, I do remember feeling quite teary at times. And I know now, looking back, that whole detox process can mean that emotions can come out in certain ways. And I think just to honour those emotions, I do recall doing a lot of journaling and, feeling that there was a shift in the anger, because prior to doing this work, I was really irritable. Like I was really, I felt, I felt that the toxicity was at such head level that I wanted to really punch out at things, like a really lash out type things, but not at people, but at walls, or at myself. I was so angry at myself, and that quickly dissipated. There was a lot of tears, but yes, I think it was more exciting than anything, that I was finally getting the support, finally getting, the support that I needed.
Okay,
And I think it's also one thing that is interesting well that, when you've been on a path of medication like I was for so long, I remember being told at the age of 15 that I was hyperallergic and I'd have to be on this medication the rest of my life. And I do also recall in my mid-20s talking to another doctor. You'd always go and get your peak flow measured as an asthmatic. And make sure you take your medication, make sure you take your medication. And then when, hospitalizations with the EpiPen and the administering of adrenaline, make sure you take your medications. You've got to take your medications. You're going to be on these medications for the rest of your life. And never really questioning that until the point where I reached, at the age of 32, I'm thinking, something needs to change. This is not sustainable. There's got to be a better way. And then finding the natural solutions, finding the support person that could identify what was really going on. And then also I think the surprise that I would never have put it down to a gut issue. You think lungs are lungs and lungs are breathing, and that's where the problem is, that it's something in the respiratory system that's the weakness, not the gut. So
now, oh my goodness, yes, just kind of coming to terms with what it is and getting to the root cause is almost half the battle.
Yeah.
Now, what could you kind of explain a little bit about that relationship between, your gut health and the hormones and those changes that you were experiencing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with me, I think, look, a lot of that work, working on the gut, working on the liver, meant that when it did come time to conceive, I conceived very quickly and very easily. And I think that if I hadn't have done that work prior to having a baby, then my son would have inherited all that toxicity as well. Because the hookworm that I was diagnosed with, she said was, I would have inherited it at birth. Okay, so we see this link between our gut health and our hormones in clinic. I talk about, with my clients, I talk about this delicate balance between the main hormones, like your sex hormones, your cortisol, your thyroid, and insulin. All right, and we have this very delicate balance between particularly the insulin and the thyroid and the health of the gut. Because if the gut isn't working adequately, then we have this knock-on effect on the insulin. We have this knock-on effect on the adrenals. And then when we reach the peri-menopause stage and our sex hormones are becoming unbalanced, we really heavily rely on the adrenals to then produce the hormones. And of course, if the adrenals have not had the support that they need, or they've been running on empty for so long and we've been stressed, then we see this big imbalance that happens. And then if we're not nourishing our body with a good range of prebiotic foods, like whole foods, like good prebiotic foods like cooked onions, cooked garlic, Jerusalem artichokes, leeks, our leafy greens, our fermented foods, then we have this breakdown in the process in the gut, and we struggle to nourish ourselves in a good way. And then we have this knock-on effect with, okay, if we're taking on food that is causing an impact on the insulin response, like if we're having too many sweet foods or carbohydrate foods, then we have this knock-on effect on the insulin response. And then the adrenals are really struggling because we've got this cortisol flooding the bloodstream. And of course, when we've got cortisol in the bloodstream, we're not digesting well. So we have this really delicate dance between the gut health and those four key hormones. And then if we have, cortisol effect going, we've got high cortisol levels throughout the day and even into the evening because of blood sugar imbalance, then we have a problem with our sleep. And we have a problem with our sleep, then we're not getting the repair that we need on the liver. And, again, we see this link between, okay, if the liver's becoming sluggish and it's not producing the bile to take the toxins out of the cell and out through the small intestine and out of the large intestine, then we see things being backed up, and we see this recirculation of hormones. Because it's one thing, we've got to make the hormones and we have to eliminate the hormones. And so if we're not making the right hormones, or we're not then eliminating because of a sluggish liver, then we see this recirculation, and the hormones almost then make their own hormones, and they get reabsorbed into the fat cells. And then we see a picture of okay, we're reabsorbing fat, we're not losing weight, we're craving sugars, we're not sleeping well. And then we get to this picture of peri-menopause where we've got hormones going all a bit erratic anyway. And so it all starts to unravel. So, yes, it's an interesting, delicate balance between happy, healthy gut and happy, healthy hormones.
Mm. I love that. I love that reciprocity. It's almost a catch-22. You're not sure, okay, which to start with, but thankfully you were able to work with a nutritionist and make those changes. Now,
Yeah.
it was a question you had mentioned that the probiotics as well as having to give up different foods for a time. Now, is it a question of balancing that, or were you not necessarily eating enough of the probiotics, or you didn't have enough of something so that the bad bacteria could, had free reign essentially on the situation?
Yeah, I think that the candida was definitely being caused by, I think medications were exacerbating the candida for sure. So,
Okay.
we know that there's a link between the oral microbiome and the gut microbiome. And when I was in a situation of having lots of puffers, so 3 different types of puffers, 2 of them big on quite high content of anabolic steroids, then this would be having a significant impact on the mouth microbiome, the oral hygiene, the oral microbiome. And that for sure was impacting that balance of good bacteria in the gut. And the
Okay.
high candida would have been causing me to crave more sweet stuff and more, pardon me, and more fruits. And I was handling, with the juice bar, I was handling fruit from all around the world, and I was having quite a lot of fruit juice at that time as well. So feeding that candida. But I was also quite stressed. I had a very, very stressful. I was working really hard at that point, building up my business and traveling all over the world, traveling back and forth between both countries, and I was picking up, picked up Lyme's disease. Now, it is suspected that Lyme's disease is in the food chain now, not just
Mm.
from a tick bite, but it's in the food chain from the way food is being stored and transported around the world, the way fruit and vegetables are stored and transported all around the world. So we have this exposure to these pathogens that was building up. So, the more I was stressed, the more I was probably working too hard, reaching for too much fruit sugars that I was craving the energy, but then also handling this fruit and veg from all around the world meant that I had this greater exposure. And then, of course, with the medications, it was breaking down the gut lining and the balance in the bacteria in the gut. So it was, again, a catch-22 of like, oh, my goodness, here I was thinking I was healthy and I was juicing, right? But having way too much fruit, touching all this fruit from all around the world and having all this medication meant that whole system was breaking down and making me much more triggered to a whole range of things. Like, I had an anaphylaxis to nasturtiums, to potato salad, to touching a tree in Greece. I don't even know what the tree was, but I touched this tree in Greece and I was ended up in hospital for 3 days. So it was, it was just, a combination of all of those things that started to unravel. And looking back now, how quickly it could be fixed by eliminating trigger foods, eliminating the sugar, trying to de-stress the situation, and then feeding in the good probiotics, good prebiotics, and good like glutathione and good amino acids, like the building blocks of the good healthy gut. Very different story.
Sure. Now, how prevalent is that type of situation? Are there some women who, go through that perimenopause, menopausal time, and perhaps they don't have those issues? But yet there are those, such as your own situation or others who may have an extreme, and then you've got kind of the middle of the road. How prevalent is this type of situation?
Yeah, look, especially when it comes to parasites, there can be quite a large percentage of the population that have parasites that don't even realise. Like 85% of the population would have some sort of overgrowth of bad bacteria in the gut, which is something that we can test. Certainly, ladies that come to me, we all see that they have some sort of breakdown in the digestive tract, whether it's the oral hygiene, whether it's even just, the stress and the lack of chewing and the lack of taking time to nourish and time to prepare real food, and taking the time to include some fermented foods, or even taking the time to soak nuts and grains. Very, very different. So we're starting to see, because of our our lifestyle. We're starting to see ladies that aren't taking the time to nourish, and we've all got high stress situations, like show me a career woman that doesn't, show me a busy mum that does not have high stress situation, and then we have add in, modern day lifestyle where we're probably, spending far too long on screen, not enough time outside. So we see this layering, this, effect of poor digestion, not taking time to nourish, hormones out of whack anyway, potentially dysbiosis or something breaking down in the gut because of all the stuff that's going into the food chain, the way the food is being handled, the lack of time it's taking to prepare, to nourishingly prepare foods like soaking, fermenting, sprouting. These techniques all take time, and then add stress in on top of that. So we are seeing that modern day woman is, has a lot of these issues going on, and then then the perimenopause comes along and we think, okay, let's add in the hormones that are going a bit crazy at that point, and a liver that's become sluggish because of various lifestyle factors and environmental factors, and then we see this picture of discomfort. So I'd say like most of the women I see have either gut issues or hormone issues or the combination of the two.
Okay.
And even you look even on Facebook in some of the groups, some of the ladies that are complaining of, I'm just not sleeping, I'm so stressed, I'm so achy, my joints are aching, I'm feeling wired but tired and frazzled, and I'm just close to the edge, or I'm feeling depressed and anxious. All these conversations that are going on. It seems like it's quite prevalent.
Okay. Now, have you seen, and you're working with many different people, just that transformation similar to what you went through?
Yes, it is one. I think it's probably the best part of the job. And when you come, a lady comes to us and has whole pages of, a couple of pages of symptoms, and then you can work with them over a period of 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or a few months, depending on how much hand holding they need. And some ladies respond very quickly. Like it might be a couple of weeks and they're saying, oh my God, I'm sleeping so much better, or, oh, I don't have the body aches, or I'm actually going to the toilet every day, or, I'm just feeling so much lighter and brighter in myself. So I do see those transformations, and they're so rewarding when they happen. The majority of the ladies who come to the point where they need to find, to speak to a nutritionist, they're at their wit's end. And we do see really low energy levels and poor sleeping hygiene, poor sleeping habits. We see a lot of constipation or IBS, whereas things, are transiting through the gut either too fast or too slow. We see really high stress levels. And we see women that are, they're accidentally overweight. They're, I don't deal with ladies particularly that are coming just for weight loss. They're coming for other issues, but they will always say, and by the way, I've lost weight. I've lost, 12 kilos or a few pounds, and sometimes it takes a few weeks. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Ladies can get a little bit disheartened at around about the 5-6 week mark, where I'm not managing to lose weight, and I'm just hang on in there, it's going to happen. By 6 weeks, by 8 weeks, they're starting to feel really, really different. So it's wonderful to see that transformation.
And they feel better. Their attitude is probably better, and just their whole outlook on various aspects of their life, I'm sure.
I think when we take time to nourish ourselves and put ourselves first, because I think, women over 40 have spent a long time either caring for aging parents or spouse or children, or all three at the same time, as well as trying to have a career or a business or something. And, so often having to put everybody else first. One of the techniques as I teach is that the deeper self-love and the self-care for the client, for the woman, is just so important, that to put themselves first, so they do have that ability for continued energy. You can return to that energy that you felt in your 20s and your 30s when you start to put yourself first, and you start to take the time to nourish and de-stress and think about sleep hygiene, think about the importance of putting your own sleep first. Because sometimes it's the sleep and the energy that gives you the energy then to make the dietary changes or the lifestyle changes. If you're not moving enough, but you're not sleeping, you're not, it's a tricky one, because, really to get the sleep and the energy right. And when you're hormonal, sleep can be a real big one. That cortisol response and that link between the blood sugar can be, quite tricky. So yes, it's putting yourself first and knowing that that's okay, that it's, you're worth putting in the time and making the changes, and then feeling a deeper sense of connection and joy. I've had clients come to me that say, my only feeling of joy in the day is when I sit down and have a cup of tea and a few shortbread biscuits. That's joy. Or I sit on the couch at night and I have my chocolate. That's the only joy they have. So we can start to unravel that and go, okay, how else can we get joy in your life that's not about food?
Good point.
And letting them feel that, oh, okay, my desires, my pleasure, my own feelings are important and important enough to do the work.
Absolutely.
And you do see a shift. You do see this shift of alignment to joy and pleasure and, purpose and connection to that energy once you do that work. And that's a bit that I really love. Like, I really love that, connection to passion and energy and purpose that then gives you that, that strength in your immune system and that resilience in your immune system when you feel like you're connected and you feel like you're on purpose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And now, is there, for those who are not quite at, perimenopause or menopause, are there things that they can do to prevent those types of issues?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things that I teach my clients straight up is really focus on real food. That's a good place to start because, there's so many beige foods. There's so many foods masquerading as foods in the supermarket that are not real food. And you've got to be very, very careful because the food giants they're messing with our food. And, they're starting to put in ingredients that are not really food. They're masquerading as food. So eat as close to nature as possible. Look at diversity. I always look at the plate and think, is there something raw? Is there something living on there, like a pile of leafy greens or some sprouts or some broccoli sprouts or something like that? One of the best superfoods ever, broccoli sprouts. And then look at a plate of food and think diversity of real food. If you are struggling, especially with joint pain or insomnia or any bloating, then think about, that's not normal. That's not a normal part of aging. Think about what is your body saying to you, like those little whispers. Pay attention to the whispers before they become shouts. Make sure you're adequately hydrated, like drink lots and lots of water, so important. And as much real food as possible, so important. Be aware of the real inflammatory foods like sugar, dairy, alcohol, refined sugar, fizzy drinks, all that sort of thing, because they can take you off track. And they become very habitual, don't they? They can easily sneak in. And, once in a blue moon's okay. But, and I think that pay attention to the whispers, because you want to pay attention to those little niggles before they become so bad that your body starts to shout at you.
Okay. Yes. That's good to know, because that can, easily be incorporated, before you reach that point rather than, trying to fix things once problems occur.
Yeah. Because if you ignore those little niggles for long enough and then they turn into something else, the little niggles are quite easy to fix. But when they become so advanced that they become some sort of chronic issue, that's so much harder to fix. So yeah, pay attention to those little niggles. Even if you've got a little ache in your little fingernail or, your little finger joints aching all the time, just pay attention to those little niggles. They're trying to tell you something.
Absolutely. Well, Trish, how can people get in contact with you?
I would love it. Look, if you're listening out there and you're thinking, that's me, I've got a few little niggles. Probably the first protocol, join the free Facebook group. There's a Facebook group that I run called Good Gut Health, and you're very welcome in there because I do weekly lives in there. I do the occasional free challenge in there. I put a lot of content in there just to nudge people in the right direction. So you're very welcome to join that. It's called Good Gut Health. And then I'm across, the socials. I'm on Facebook, Trish Tucker May. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as Trish Tucker May. So my website is trishttuckermay.com. But you probably, come into the good gut health. If you're listening and you're thinking, oh yeah, I've got a few little niggles, I'm a little bit bloated, or I'm a little bit constipated, or, I'm not quite digesting the way I don't quite have the energy that I would like, then come into that group. You're very welcome.
Oh, wonderful. We will include all of those things in the show notes. And Trish, it has been a pleasure. I love your focus on that perimenopause, menopause era or state, but there's so many things that people can do to prevent that and to really restore their vitality. I'm so grateful for your focus on that and for everything that you do in your coaching and in your other areas.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.